أنزلن سكينتك علينا وثبت الأقدام إلا قينا. Inshallah, today we will dive deeper in the Quran as in a contextual understanding, historical understanding, and they call it in the academic circles hermeneutical understanding of the Quran, and also division of the Quran, how to kind of like divide the Quran in pieces and see what's going on in the surahs in the Quran and in everything that's going on in the Quran out there. So inshallah, if you can mute yourself, I think we're live now in both in YouTube and Facebook. So inshallah, we're gonna go ahead and get started with that. Let me grab the screen. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started now. Know your Quran, part number 2. Today, inshallah, we will talk more about the division of the Quran. And the main points of today are going to be the Makki Qur'an and the Madani Qur'an. And I will explain what that means by Makki and Madani. Comes from the 2 famous cities, Mecca and Medina. And number 2, how to know the difference between both. Number 3, the distinguishing parts between Makki and Madani Quran and signs of Makki and Madani in the Quran. We'll talk about signs in terms of numbers, in terms of topics as well. The numbers of surahs in the Quran, the numbers of chapters. Surah means a chapter, and also we will understand the meaning of the word surah and the order of surahs. Why is the Quran divided in surahs? We'll answer this question. The names and the types of the surahs in the Quran, the ayahs or the verses in the Quran, what that means and how they have been constructed, and also the orders of ayahs or verses in the Quran and the number of words. So basically today we will focus more to see what's going on in the Quran in terms of times, in terms of places, in terms of names. So let's go deeper now and start with this, inshallah. So the Makki Quran and the Madani Quran. The Makki comes from the main word Mecca, the city that we talked about before. And Madani comes from the name of the city, Medina. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam he started receiving the revelation when he was 40 years old. He passed around 63 years old. In that period of time, when the revelation started when he was 40 until he passed away, it's a period of almost 23 years. 13 of them, according to the authentic narrations, he lived in Mecca. 13 out of the 23. 10 out of the 23, he lived in Medina, his host city, and where he died. So there are surahs in the Quran that were revealed in both places, and there are surahs that were revealed in other places. This is why the concept or the idea of Makki and Madani comes from Makki Quran and Madani Quran. So the designation between Makki and Madani is not something that the Prophet made, or is not a revelation. It's not part of the revelation of Allah that says, hey, this surah or this chapter or this verse is Makki and this chapter is Madani. It's not, the terms are being kind of like crafted after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but that doesn't mean that the explained thing, it's a descriptive understanding or descriptive definition to the Quran in terms of when and where the verses have been revealed. The Sahaba, the companions, the word Sahaba means companions, the companions of the Prophet and their later and followers and scholars of followers, they have been focusing so much in the Quran to the point that they were studying each and every pieces that's been revealed in the Quran and each and every words and even verses. So this is why they start to think, how can to put the Quran in a chronological understanding and to see when this is revealed first, when this is revealed second, what's distinguished in that thing and what's distinguished in the Madani ones. So there are 114 chapters, surahs in the Quran. There are 84 of them Makki surahs, mean that were revealed in Mecca, and I will explain to you what that means by Makki inshallah later. And there are 30 Madani surahs. Let's first know what do we mean by saying Makki and Madani and all of these ones. So there are three main opinions about that. What do we mean by Madani? Is it because it was revealed in Mecca? Because that's why it's called Makki, and it's revealed in Medina, that's why it's called Madani? No. The first opinion, and that's why I think the most authentic one, being supported by multiple definitions and multiple usage from the companions of the Prophet, the Makki surahs are the surahs that were revealed before the Hijrah. The word Hijrah means the migration to Medina. When the Prophet, after 3 years of torture, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the permission to leave Mecca to go to Medina. So any surahs or any chapter or any verse from the Quran that was revealed before that period, in the 13-year period, it's called Makki, even if it was revealed outside of Mecca. That's one. And the Madani surahs are the ones that were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the immigration to Medina. They are divided based on the time of revelation, not the places only. That's the most famous opinion. There's another opinion that says that the Makki surahs are the ones that were revealed in Mecca and its neighboring places, and the Madanis are the ones that were revealed in Medina and its neighboring places, whether before or after the Hijrah, after the migration or immigration to Medina. The division here is based on the place of revelation, not the time. Therefore, there's a third category for the surahs that were revealed neither in Mecca or Medina. Like we have surahs that were revealed in the first battle or the first expedition between the Muslims and the Meccans, when the Meccans came to attack Muslims in the place called Badr. And there are also some surahs or some chapters or some verses in the Quran were revealed in a place called Al-Hudaybiyah. It's between both. If you look at the geographical parts between Mecca and Medina, you see some places in the middle where some parts of the Quran were revealed. So that's the second category. The third category are the Makkis, are the ones that were revealed regarding the people of Mecca, and the Madani are the ones regarding the people of Medina. The most authentic one, and I've seen it like very common and very commonly practiced and even commonly understood among majority of the scholars, are the first distinction between both. So now when we say Makki Quran, you know the Makki Quran is the Quran that was revealed before the migration. Madani Quran is the Quran that was revealed after the migration. So the most authentic opinion here is the first one. The division is based on time of revelation. So signs of the Makki Quran. There's something distinction here. We are analyzing textual analysis here of the Quran in terms of Makki and Madani. The Makki Quran, which was revealed before the migration, was focused in many things that the Madani Quran was not focused on that much, because actually they've been built in. We talked before that the Quran has been dispersed in the first session of Know Your Quran series. The Quran has been dispersed because it makes it easy for the people to follow up with the Quran and to be more practical, more effective. So the Makki Quran, these are signs. If you see in any of the surahs, you know that this surah is Makki. For example, the existence of the term, O sons of Adam, that was mentioned exclusively in the chapters in the Quran that were revealed in Mecca. The surahs that has a sajda of tilawah. Sajda of tilawah, it's called a prostration of recitation of the Quran. I have a slide for this. I will explain it later. There are 15 surahs in the Quran that has that sajda or that prostration mark in the Quran. When we read that part, we leave the Quran, or even while we are praying or we hear it, we prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we hear that verse. All of the surahs that include these sajdas is the sentence that talks directly about the prostration, or talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks directly about the people who refuse to prostrate. So it's a way to express our humbleness and our slavery to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3 is the surahs that has the term kalla or nay. These are the surahs, all of them are Makki surahs. Number 4, the surahs that start with independent letters are Makki except Baqarah and Imran. What do you mean by independent letters? It's called the huruf. They do not have a meaning. Like for example, Alif Lam Mim, Ha Mim. عين سين قاف كاف ها يا عين صاد ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا تا سين ميم. These ones are that we pronounce the letters independently. All of the surahs that have these ones at the beginning, they are Makki surahs except two, Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran, the second and third chapter in the Qur'an. Number 5, the surahs that have the story of the Prophet Adam and the curse Iblis or Satan are Makki except Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter number 2, Al-Baqarah. Number 6, the surahs that include the stories of the previous nations and their stories are Makki except Surah Al-Baqarah. So like the story of Hud, story of a Naml, stories of a Shu'ara, the poets, all the stories that explain or in them explain the early stories from other prophets and other peoples before the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of them are Makki except Baqarah, the second chapter and the longest chapter in the Quran. Majority of the surahs that have short verses in terms of length of the verses are Makki except a few Madani surahs, but majority of them are Makki. So when I see any of these 7 signs, I know that this surah was revealed early on in the first 13 years of the revelation and the message of the Prophet Muhammad. So let's talk now about the sajdah of tilawah. We said 15 surahs in the Quran that has a prostration order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when people should prostrate when they read them. 15 of them these are the 15 ones. These are the names. Al-A'raf, number 7 in the Quran, in ayah 206. Al-Ra'd, Al-Nahl, Bani Israel or Al-Isra, Maryam, Hajj. It's mentioned twice to prostrate. Al-Furqan, the Naml, Al-Sajdah, and Sad, and Hamim, Sajdah, and also Al-Najm, and Inshiqaq, and Al-Alaq. These are the 15 surahs that has a prostration ayah in them, that when a Muslim reads them or hears them while they are praying, while they are reading, they should prostrate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, called the prostration of recitation of the Quran. Where we get this, there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he talked about this. And actually, what do we say when we prostrate? This is just a side note, but I think it's important to know as well. When we prostrate, when we read these ones, as the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, we say, Allahumma laka sajadت, wa bika amant, wa laka aslamt, anta rabbi. Oh Allah, to you I have prostrated, and in you I have believed, and to you I have submitted. You are my Lord. My face has prostrated, sajada wajhi lilladhi khalaqahu, prostrated to the one who created it, wa formed it, and brought forth its hearing, wa shaqqa sam'ahu, wa basarahu, and its sight. Blessed be Allah, the best of the creators. So when we prostrate, when we have an imam, for example, reading the Quran in Taraweeh or something, and there's something comes like this, the imam prostrate while they are praying, they prostrate right away. So they prostrate and then they go back, continue recitation of the Quran. That's what should be said when they prostrate. And that's called the prostration of tilawah. So let's go now to the Madani. The signs of the Madani, any surah that has a term, O believer, is indeed a Madani surah. Any surah that has the term, O believers, like Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu awfu bil uqud, it's Madani. O the believers, fulfill your pledges or promises. That's a Madani surah, Surah Al-Ma'idah. For example, in the surahs, like Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, Ya ladhina amanu kutiba alaykum siyam. O the believers, the siyam has been instructed upon you. That's a Madani surah, and so on and so forth. Majority of the Madani surahs have long verses in terms of length of verses. Like the verses are more stretched in the Madani surah. And there's something really interesting about this, by the way. The Arabs were very obsessed by language. The Quraysh, like the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where he was born and raised, this tribe was really obsessed by the language and their style of eloquence. That's one of the miracles of the Quran, that the Quran was challenging the people in their own ways of style of eloquence. The Quraysh people, their eloquence was demonstrated in how fast and short they express what they want to say. The Quran was very, very upfront in terms of that one. This is why it is kind of like holding them from their hearts, and they couldn't even challenge the Quran, and the Quran talks about this explicitly in multiple verses. So these are the Madani ones. Let's go now to the difference in terms of topics, the difference between Makki and Madani Quran in terms of the topic of the Quran. So first, the Makki surahs discuss the main principles of the faith. Imagine the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ early on in his revelation or early on in his message. So he needs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's helping him to build the society. And how come you build the society without first correcting the beliefs and without establishing the basics of the religion, the principle of the belief and the principle of the belief? So how come you ask someone to go and pray 5 times a day before first you tell them that they need to be humble with Allah? There is a creator, and there is the creator asked them to do this. This is why the Makki Quran was mostly, and when I say mostly, that means there are exceptions, mostly focusing in the concept or the idea of monotheism. There's only one God, and this God has no flaws, has no example. His attributes are perfection, beauty, the attributes of perfection, the attributes of beauty, and the attributes of greatness. So who is Allah is. These are majority of the Makki surahs are focusing in building the connection with Allah, and Allah is the creator and the only creator, and so on and so forth. Number 2, the belief in the unseen and the belief on the metaphysics, as they call it among the scholars of religion. The beliefs of angels, prophets, holy books, the belief in the message of the prophet, that this prophet is a legitimate prophet, is not a fake prophet. This prophet comes with a message that's beautiful for the people. These people should follow this message, and all of these ones. These are some of the topics that have been discussed in the Makki Quran. Number 3, or C, the belief of life after death. That was a really important one. Like belief in Jannah, paradise, Nar, hell, resurrection, judgment, rewards, and punishment. That was discussed by bringing something seen, and that was one of the beautiful things. Actually, when the Quran discusses this, he brings something tangible, experienced by the people, to tell them that the one who created this also created the paradise and resurrection judgment. Like, for example, by the sky, by the sun, by the moon. Like, for example, there's a surah, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. Surah Al-Qamar, there's a surah called the moon. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the day of judgment has become close and the moon has been split. That concept. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا, by the sun and the early morning. وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا, and by the moon that followed the sun. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings all of these ones by bringing experiential proofs of these things happening to the people, and that was mostly discussed in the Makki Quran. Along the way, if you have any questions, not to forget, please write them in the chat box. Number 4, one of the main topics of the Makki Quran is refuting the misconceptions and defeating the arguments against the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, even criticizing the mindset that people have by worshiping idols that are not valuable, they have no power whatsoever. And then criticizing the bad habits and the immorality that was widespread among Arabia and the Arabian societies, and that destroyed their society socially, morally, politically, and even religiously, such as killing their daughters out of fear of shame, killing their children out of fear of poverty, stealing money from the orphans, and so on and so forth, usury, and all of these ones. The last one is encouraging and supporting the early Muslims by kind of like giving them incentives of beliefs that emphasizing the virtues of patience, that they should be patient with the struggles and the trials that they're going through, observing the moralities in their own lives and correcting their own lifestyle by being truthful, by being honest in their daily interactions, by being humble, by being pure in terms of heart, by being enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, and all of these ones. So 6 main points of the Makki Quran is Allah, the beliefs, and the belief in afterlife, and also refuting the misconceptions and the arguments against the Prophet, criticizing the habits and the lifestyle and the beliefs of the people that were worshiping idols and the people who have been doing all kinds of things that's actually not Islamically or not supposedly to be, and encouraging and supporting the early Muslims by emphasizing the virtues of patience. Let's go now to the Madani Qur'an. What was special in terms of topics about the Madani Qur'an? The Madani Qur'an was inviting the people of the book, like the Christians and Jews, to the message of Islam, because they were neighbors in Yathrib, which is called Medina, and also north of Yathrib, as fulfilling the message of theirs, like being kind of like comparative religion here, or comparative message. And as Muslims, we believe, and the Quran talks about this specifically in the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad by saying, "Ma kuntu bid'an min ar-rusul." I'm not an innovation of the messengers. So the Prophet Isa, the Jesus, Moses, Jacob, Isaac, all of these prophets, and the prophets that's known for us and the prophets that are not known for us, this is a fulfillment message. Islam is a fulfillment message. This is why as Muslims we believe that Islam does not start with the Prophet Muhammad, but it's been sealed with the Prophet Muhammad as the last prophet. So the message of Isa is Islam, the message of Musa is Islam, the message of other prophets are Islam. So that was one of the main points or the main topics that was discussed mostly and mainly in the Madani Quran, by discussing the changes that took place in the other holy books, refuting the arguments of Christians and Jews, discussing their beliefs, and also talking about what's happened to the holy books before the Quran. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the Quran is muhayminan alayh, that's the fulfillment or the final testament that Allah has sent to people. Number two in the Madani Quran is discussing the concept of self-defense and jihad and how it should look like, because Muslims were not allowed to defend themselves mostly in Mecca. But when they went to Medina, they were started to allow, and we know inshallah in the seerah, the biography of the Prophet, we see how this been progressed. But they started by saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أُذِنَ الَّذِينَ أذن الذين يقاتلون في سبيل الله بأنهم ظلموا وأن الله عن نصرهم لقدير, which means that it has become lawful for the people who have been unjustly treated in their lives to defend themselves. So that's been discussing because the Muslims were really in danger, because the tribes, as we said, it's a tribal society, a tribal society that have been kind of like under risk here. Number three is that was discussing the legislatures and the details of organizing the way of life of Muslims in terms of rituals like Salah, Siyam, Hajj, like fasting, rituals, also punishment, criminal laws, family laws, how people interact, how they get married, how they get divorced, all of these details of how people live their lives in terms of khamr, like forbidding the wines, in terms of like multiple things, usury, how the people deal with each other financially, how they deal with each other socially, legally, how they deal with each other on a personal and family level as well. Number four is the marks, discussing the marks of hypocrites and their evil intentions in destroying the religion. These are the four main topics that were discussed in the Madani Quran. So now we have been talking about the Madani and so we have been talking about the Quran in terms of Madani and Makki. Let's go now to the Surahs. So we talked about the Quran in general. Surahs or chapters. We said before that the Quran is divided from 114 surahs. Surah, the word surah comes from the root sawara or swr, sawara, and it means a fence. That's the linguistic meaning of the word surah, or a wall that cages or contains something inside. It means that the fence to accommodate a number of verses with a minimum 3 verses and maximum in the Quran 200. It's actually 86. That's a typing mistake here. Maximum 286, and that's the length or the biggest surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter, and the minimum is like Surah Al-Ikhlas, like قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, or Surah إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ إِنَّ شَانِئَكَ هُوَ الْأَبْتَرُ. So the order of the surahs in the Quran is tawfiqi, and focus in that word because I will repeat that word a lot. I will repeat this term a lot. The word, tawqifi. The word tawqifi means it's a revelation. It's part of the revelation, is not ijtihad, it's not speculation, it's not just kind of like innovation that the Prophet came out with or the companions of the Prophet. That's something that has been part of the revelation. The angel Jibreel comes with the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and tells him this verse or this part of verse or this chapter should be put here in that order, in that thing. So the names, the order of the surahs, the order how the Quran has been put, like here the Quran has been designed in a way different than the chronological way. The way that this Quran has been designed and put in order is called tawqifi, which means it's a part of the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this is the actual chronological order of the surahs. So Surah Al-Alaq, the first verses that we discussed in the biography of the Prophet, اقرأ بسم ربك الذي خلق, read in the name of your Lord. That's the first surah that was revealed in the Quran, especially the first 5 ayat, and then has been going later on by this. So if you look at these chapters, this is number 1 in the chronological way, number 96 in the Mus'haf. It's number 96 here, number 1 in the chronological way in the history. And goes on in terms of that, like Al-Qalam, Al-Muzammil, Al-Muddathir, Al-Fatiha, Al-Masad, and so on and so forth. And it tells you the type is Makki, except the numbers of surahs here. So let's go on with the Quran. So you see that, like, if you are familiar with the Quran, you will see the numbers of these surahs are mostly short surahs, the Makki surahs, and they are at the end in the order in the Quran here, but they are at the beginning in the order of the history of the Quran, but they are put this way as a way from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a way of tawqifi, as a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Angel Jibreel tells the Prophet, this should be put this way. And something interesting in these charts, you will see some surahs like, for example, Al-Mursalat, it's number 33, and in the Mus'haf means the book, it's number 77, is Meccan, except ayah 48 from Medina. We will know this. So when I say a Makki surah, that doesn't mean that the whole surah from the beginning to the end is Mecca. It means that the majority of the verses that were in this surah are revealed in Mecca, with few numbers of surahs that were revealed in Medina. And the opposite goes on and the vice versa. Like when I say Madani surah, that means majority of the verses of the surahs that were revealed in Medina, except some verses out there, or maybe all of the surah. Like for example, Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter and the longest chapter in the Quran, is called the Madani surah, but it has some verses in the Baqarah that were revealed in Mecca before the name of the Baqarah comes in. So all of these ones should be put in consideration, because it's merely, this is why the Quran is the most, I would say, comprehensively studied and kind of like carefully studied by the Prophet's companion. The Prophet was really, really careful and focused by putting everything that he was ordered. And also we know that in the traditions and the hadith, that Angel Jibreel used to come every year in Ramadan to review the Quran with the Prophet until it was revealed to him. And in the year that the Prophet was died, or the year when the Prophet died, the Quran was reviewed by Angel Jibreel with the Prophet Muhammad twice in Ramadan. So that's something that should be put in consideration in terms of that. And these are all the surahs in the Quran, divided or ordered by chronological way and by the Mus'haf way. Let's go forward now. Okay, there's a misconception out there about the order of the surahs that argues that some Sahabas had their Mus'haf. Again, when I talk about Mus'haf, I'm talking about the book. When I talk about the Quran, I talk about the words and the verses and the surahs that are in the book. So some Sahaba have Mus'hafs, especially the Sahaba who know how to write and read. And we know this in the biography of the Prophet, how strong they have, how strong memories they had. So some Sahabas, they have Mus'hafs or books that are not in the same order that the book that we have now. Why? Because these Sahaba, whenever they hear something from the Prophet, they write it in their books, but they did not, their books or their Mus'hafs are not finalized with the final revision from Angel Jibreel to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Zayd ibn Thabit is one of the prominent writers, and actually the one who compiled the Quran after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the one that actually one of the closest writer. The Prophet had 40 writers, by the way, of the Quran. He didn't know how to read or write. So had 40 writers that write the Quran after him, and the Quran was written. This is, inshallah, we know this in the next session about the combining or the compiling the Quran in one mushaf. We know the history of that, inshallah, in the next session and the part of the Know Your Quran series. So this argument is not very strong at all, and it's easily to be refuted here, because the Quran is by the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the Prophet ordered it, and it's been dispersed. So some Sahabas, because they write what they hear from the Prophet and keep it for themselves, so they can read it when they pray, they can put it for themselves, they can add their remarks, they can put their comments and reflections in these verses, but they are not kind of like organized in the way that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's final revelation talked about. And we have multiple ahadith of the Prophet talking to the Sahaba where each and every verse in the Quran is. So I'm running out of time, and I need to make sure that I finish all of this together. So why is the Quran divided in surahs then? First, someone called Al-Bayhaqi, one of the scholars of hadith and the Quran, he said the Quran is divided in surahs to show the miracle of the book regardless of the length of surah. And that actually makes a lot of sense, and I found it very, very intriguing for me myself, and it's beautiful in that way, because the Quran itself explicitly tells the rivals of the Quran, come with a surah, come with a chapter like this Quran, come with a verse like this Quran, regardless that chapter is long or short. So if you tell people come with a chapter in the Quran and all the chapters are very long, they tell you, that's too long, you just giving us hard time, we can come with like a verse. So the Quran tells them, okay, come with a chapter that is consisted of 3 verses, that it is one line. Like one of the chapters in the Quran, just one line. Like, Inna a'tanaka al-kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. Number 2, it is easier for the people to read the Quran and take breaks, and it's easier for memorization. Number 3, the surahs or chapters explain something unique in them. Like, for example, the chapter Yusuf or Joseph explains the story of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. Also, the chapter of Baqarah includes the story of the cow. The chapter of Al Imran includes the story of the household of Imran and the Sayyidah lady Maryam. The chapter is called Maryam. It explains the story of the Maryam. The chapter called Al Isra, or the other name for it is Bani Israel, the Israelites. It talks about the Israelites' history. So that explains, and it's more organized in that way. It's also more eloquent and more organized to have the Quran under chapters instead of the whole Quran to be one chapter. The names and types of surahs in the Quran. The names of surahs in the Quran, who comes up with the name? Who comes up with the name that's Baqarah? Or comes up with the name that says Bani Israel or Isra, or Al-Fatiha, or the name of Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad, or Al-Masad, Tabbat Yada, or Al-Nasr? Who comes up with these names? So the same thing is tawqifi. As I mentioned before, the word tawqifi is a revelation, part of the revelation. There's no human intervention here, but there are surahs that have more than one name, and that's like the thing that I found it very common to the way we can understand it. Like when one surahs have multiple names, one of the name is the tawqifi, and the other names are like the nicknames or the given names to the surah or what was famous. Like, for example, I remember when I was younger memorizing the Quran and going to my sheikh to memorize the Quran, we say, for example, Surah Amma. Surah Amma is the name of it, it's called the Naba, the great news. But we say between each other is Amma because it starts with the word Amma yatasa'alun 'ani naba al-'azim. For example, Surah Tabbat, that's the surah is called Al-Masad. But we start with the word Tabbat because it starts with the word Tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab. For example, Surah Alif Lam Mim Sad. We say that one, that's in Surah Al-A'raf. We say Alif Lam Mim Sad because it starts by Alif Lam Mim Sad. Or Surah Yusuf, that's the name of it. Or for example, Surah Al-Isra, it talks about the night journey of the Prophet to heaven and the journey between Mecca and Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem. So, but also there's another name is Bani Israel. So there are 74 surahs that have only one name, and there are 40 surahs that have more than one name. We do not have time to explain each one of them, but just to tell you, so one of them is tawqifi and the others are like nicknames or given names. How the surahs have been divided in the Quran? We can divide the surahs in terms of length, of the Quran to four categories. At-Tuwal surahs, that means that the longest surahs. These are the 7 surahs that starting from the 2nd chapter all the way going to Al-A'raf, and then after this jumping to and then going to Yunus, or the surah of the Prophet Jonah or Yunus. We have Al-Ma'in, that means that the 200 verses or over 200 verses surahs, they are all the surahs that follow these surahs going to all the way to a surah or a chapter called the Sajda. We have after this Al-Mathani, or the second or the bint surah after the Ma'in, after the 200 verse surahs. These are the ones that follow afterwards. And we have after this Al-Mufassal, the explained surah, the word Mufassal, the explained. And these are the smaller surahs all the way from Surah Qaf, wal Qur'an al-Majid, all the way until the last surah in the Quran, Qul a'udhu bi Rabbi nas. The order of ayahs and the number of words in the Quran. Let's go to that one. It's very interesting. So the order of ayahs and numbers of surahs in the Quran is also tawqifi. That means what? That means each verse that's mentioned in that Quran, each verse was a revelation that was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to angel Jibreel to the Prophet Muhammad, to the companions of the Prophet, the writers of the Quran at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was memorized in that way by the strong memories of the Arabs and the companions of the Prophet. So the way the Quran is organized is merely tawqifi, is merely revelation, and there is no space for ijtihad or speculations or kind of working out things or counting things or changing anything in it. It was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad from Allah by angel Jibreel to the companions, followed that, and then it was compiled and written in that way. There are ayahs in the Quran that were revealed years after others, and they were put in surahs. The Prophet Muhammad in multiple hadith, like for example, he said, whoever reads the first 10 ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf, the caves, chapter cave, that's called, the name of it is called cave. Whoever reveals these ones is going to go to Jannah, for example. Or whoever reads the last 10 ayahs in the last 10 ayahs, for example, in Surah, or the last 4 ayahs in Surah Al-Baqarah, every day in the morning is going to have this. Whoever do that, do this. And the ayat, the verses of the Quran, they were revealed in a way that's actually being put in a way that's not in order at all. Like for example, there's an ayah comes after the starting of the revelation by 10 years, and then put next to an ayah or a verse in the Quran that was revealed like in the first year of the revelation to the Prophet Muhammad. That's in terms of verses or ayat. Go into letters, words. There's a typing here as well. The number of words in the Quran, they are controversial among scholars depending how they see the definition of a word in Arabic. So they were saying there are 77,932 words, and some others say 77,437 words, and some others said that this is going on to be more than this, less than that, to 77,277 words. The reason for this, like some people say, for example, فِي السَّمَاءِ وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. They look at fi, in, and the sama, in the sky, your bounties or the blessing from Allah and what's being prepared to you. They see the two, fi as-sama, in the sky, as one word. This is why they change the numbers of words. But that tells you something. The Quran was really carefully, meticulously, thoroughly studied, even in terms of numbers of words. They study the Quran carefully. And we know, more we know about the Quran, we see how meticulously and thoroughly the companions and the followers, they are sciences of the Quran, as I said in the first session. So I think we're 41 now, so we're going to stop here. That's the last slide. We will open it, inshallah, to discussion and questions and answering the questions, inshallah, after this. So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead. So let me go to the chat. Okay, so I see a question here that says, Islam existed before Judaism. Islam, in an Islamic point of view, it doesn't mean that existed before Judaism. Islam existed with the creation of the human beings, with Prophet Adam alayhi salam. So there's nothing called like Judaism in that sense. And even, by the way, historically, the word Judaism, it's not an old thing at the time of the Prophet Ibrahim. That's a new thing, comes from Yahuda, the tribes. And that was in Palestine, the northern kingdom, which is called Israel, and the southern kingdom is called Judea. And that's when it comes the word Judaism, because the southern kingdom was more dominant and the northern one was kidnapped or exiled by the Assyrians early on, around like 1,000 years before the Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So Islam doesn't exist before Judaism. The message of the Prophet Musa or Moses is called Islam as well. But the difference between them, as the Quran explicitly talks about that, لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا, which means for each prophet and messenger, they have a different lifestyle in terms of legislatures and how to live their lives. Like, for example, at the time of the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, repentance from a sin of polytheism is killing the self. That's the repentance. That's the way that the law is, the law of the Moses, or the Moses law, or the law of the Prophet Musa. So Islam doesn't exist before Judaism, but Islam has been around. It's not a new thing, as I said before. Islam did not start with the Prophet Muhammad, but Islam sealed with the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Any other questions about this, about these ones? I'm going to share again the slides to just like maybe you might have questions about this again by looking at these slides, inshallah. So today we talked about the Makki and Madani Qur'an, what makes something called Makki and Madani, the difference, the distinguishing between them in terms of signs, and also after this the topics, the numbers of surahs in the Quran, the meaning of surahs in the Quran, and the orders of surahs. We talked about where the Quran is divided in surahs, the names and types of surahs, the ayahs, what that means by word ayah or verse in the Quran, the meaning, the order of ayahs, and the number of ayahs. Any questions, any thoughts, anything? So I see here, do you feel reading the Quran by chronological order shows something different than how it is organized now? So the Quran, it's organized now, is not a new thing. It's organized, by the way, when the Prophet, like, for example, a verse that comes to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam revealed to the Prophet. So the Prophet right away tell them to put it in that chapter, in that order, in that chapter. So the Quran, reading the Quran this way, or reading the Quran in any way, it doesn't make anything. It doesn't make anything to the concept of, for example, of not being a Muslim or doing something wrong. It's very important to know these ones, because when as Muslims we are asked about the Quran, we know exactly what the Quran is, how it's been divided, how it's been organized. When somebody tells you why this surah is called this way, or why the Quran is organized this way, and all of these ones, it's really important to know, because that gives us the information when we approach the Quran. We see the blessings in each and every verses that were revealed in the Quran, and we learn how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared the Muslims with that, and the early Muslims with that. If Islam is the religion, there's another question. If Islam is the religion of one that submits to Allah, Surah Al-Baqarah, بَلَى مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَمُحْسِنٌ فَلَا أَجْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, and Ahlul Kitab obliged to be given direct da'wah. So the Quran talked about this. When we study the Quran in a contextual way, like studying the contextual understandings of each and every verse in the Quran, that will tells you a lot of details. Reading the Quran without understanding the context, and inshallah one of the senses of the Quran is called the reasons of revelation, will help us to do this. We are as Muslims, we are required to give da'wah by actions as well as by words to everyone in the world. What does it mean? Does it mean that we should force it or shovel it down in the throats of people? Of course not. That's not the life. That's not the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is why Sayyidah Aisha, when she was asked by someone called Hisham ibn Amir ibn Fuhayra, and he came and told her, "Tell me about the Prophet's life." She asked him and told him, "Did you read the Quran?" He said, "Yes." She told him the Prophet was a live Quran going on. The Prophet did not force anyone. He asked people, this is a message that comes fulfilling you. If you want to believe in it, it's fine. If you don't, it's fine. Even he was exerting more efforts than he was supposed to exert to call people and give da'wah to other people. So as Muslims, we believe, and there's nothing wrong with this, that the message of the Quran is the fulfillment of the messages of Christians and Jews and all of that. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he was welcoming the Christian from Yemen coming to visit him, he told them about the message of the Quran. They said, "Okay, we are good with this. We respect you, but we do want to believe in this." He told them, "Okay, it's up to you, and that's it. I'll leave it at this point." So whoever directs his face to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَهُوَ مُحْسِن, and kind of like being humble to this, and there's a lot of details about this. Like they said, like the people who are not directly expressed or experience Islam and all of that, they might this is something left to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's one of the concepts of called the tarjih, or leaving that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of that. But as Muslims, as humans in earth, we are required to act as Muslims, how to supposed to act, and to ask the answers and answer the questions of people who are Muslim. The life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never forced anyone to give da'wah to them. Even one time, Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he was the leader and the governor or the president, Amir al-Mu'mineen, or the Khalifa, the Caliph, so he was one time asked by one of the Jews to help him. So he helped him and told him, "Don't you want to become a Muslim?" So the Jewish person told him, "The Prophet did not force Jews to do this, and I think you are using your power and privilege as the leader to ask me to be Jews." He told him, "Forgive me, I'm sorry, I forgot. I shouldn't ask you this. I should help you regardless." So it's more complicated, it's more complex, it needs more discussion in terms of that one. But just to put it in the nutshell, we are required to express our Islam in all aspects of life, through actions and through words as well, but not to force people, and to understand the concept of da'wah. This is why the verses of the Quran, the whole verses in the Quran, the whole Quran is taken as indivisible book. I cannot take one verse selectively without understanding it. This one, by coming with "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana," call for the name of your Lord with wisdom and with good, bringing good tidings and bringing good advice. It's also required. So both of them come together, and part of it, understanding the context of the person that you're talking to about your own faith and your own religion. And one of the experiences that I found, actually, I even designed a class to be a class called the Da'wah class. And that class actually, probably, inshallah, in the next 2 months or after Ramadan, inshallah, we might have this one. It's a very comprehensive class talking about the concept of da'wah and how to give da'wah and how to understand da'wah in a more comprehensive ways, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. I think we're out of time by a long time, but it's always nice having you here, and it's always interesting to learn new things. I myself am learning a lot of things. I learned by speaking out loud. And actually, Jazakumullah khair, and I really appreciate your time. And inshallah, we meet again tomorrow. Inshallah, is going to be talking about reviving our hearts, and the topic of tomorrow is called "Towards an Intentional Prayer," or a farewell prayer. It's a very interesting one. It's going to help us to practice prayer in a more self-awareness and self-conscious way. So, waiting for you, inshallah, tomorrow. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.